Hey, everybody, welcome into the Betting Pros podcast. Or if you are here with us on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/bettingpros, our Betting Pros live stream, we are here to talk about some player props for week 13. With me to do that is Kendall Valenzuela, social content producer at PFF. Find her on Twitter at KValenzuela17. Kendall, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Dan, I'm great. I mean, it's week 13 already. I actually cannot believe it. But we're here and we're doing it. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and I will say that this is the first time that we are doing this sort of episode, a pure player props live stream episode. So as the first guest, I want you to know, like you can't go wrong. You're automatically the best guest that we have ever had on this podcast.
So you're welcome. Are we done? Are we good then? Are we good to go?
This is it. Thank you for joining us. This has been a fantastic show. We'll catch you again next week. No, but we were talking about this. Like, player props are great, and you do a lot of great stuff over at PFF.
Thank you.
But it's a little tough on Fridays, right? Because not everything is out as the practice reports come and everything like that. So we're a little limited in what we can talk.
We are a little limited today. Like, I have a few of my favorite prop bets, but just know, like, the lines are going to move. And so I'm trying to give, like, what I think I would like if the line moved a good amount, if I would still like. But yeah, it's tough on Fridays. That's why, like, we do shows on Sunday, and then my partner Ben Brown and I at PFF, we do prop shows right before every Island game. And even then we're like sweating it out 45 minutes before, trying to figure out the injury stuff and all that. But we'll still do well here. We'll still have a clean slate.
Yeah. And again, I do think that saying basically I like the prop here, and I'd probably I try to do it. I'd bet it up to X number, right? Like that's sort of where I like to go with it. But again, there are things changing. Like, a lot of books are obviously waiting for the final practice reports. And there are a lot of players. Like, I'm very interested to see what Foster Moreau's line is going to be with Darren Waller going to be out, but it's not up yet. So that's the sort of thing. But again, we'll talk about that as well on Sunday morning with me and Matt Peralta, as we always do. So let's just talk about it a little bit here. We've looked at some props. We haven't shared these yet, actually. So we can have and I know. What if you hate mine, you can say it. I will not be offended. But be nice. Be nice about it.
I will. I'm very
nice. All right, good. Start us off. What do you got? What's a player prop?
So I live for the quarterback rushing prop, and that's just a me thing. It's a toxic trait. I know, it's like right behind my anytime touchdown scorer. 2 toxic traits, anytimes, and then quarterback rushing props. But I love, and remember, this line is going to change, but I love Joe Burrow. When it opened, it was at 7.5 rushing yards. And I absolutely love that line. Like, it's crazy where the Bengals are at. And just to put it into perspective, like PFF, where I'm at, we are in Cincinnati. So like Bengals fans, we're around them all the time, but like we're 2 years removed from that like 2-win Bengals season. And now they're 7-4 in the AFC North. Burrow's playing well. I think he's the highest graded AFC quarterback in the AFC for PFF with an 86.2. I like the line here just because the Chargers' run defense is it's bad. It's bad. So like I said, I live for the quarterback rushing prop. I think against the Chargers, he can do well. Like I said, they're the worst run defense in the NFL. They allow 145.3 rushing yards per game, and they're the only NFL team to allow over 1,500 rushing yards on the season. So I think it's with the momentum that the Bengals are playing with and what they're kind of fighting for right now, I can see Joe Burrow just getting an easy 1 or 2 to hit that over for sure.
So right now, the odds I'm seeing, and what I'm looking at right now is the easiest way for me to look at it is our prop bet cheat sheet at BettingPros, which sort of takes everything and it compares our consensus projections to see what we've got. It likes the over as well. So already we're 1 for 1.
Yes.
The line on it that I am seeing right now is 8.5 yards. Is that roughly where you were looking at it in terms of?
Yeah, okay. That's about, I had 7.5 and we figured it'd move. That was early. So we figured it'd move up more or less a couple yards. So I still like it at 8.5. Like we said, like the Chargers, while this is going to be a good game, and I believe and I hope we're on the same page that this game should have been flexed instead of the Broncos Chiefs. I was hoping that this one would have been flexed because it's at home, it's in Cincinnati. So I really like the line here. Like I said, they're playing really well. Burrow went for 11 rushing yards in week 11, and then he went for 8 last week against the Steelers. So I don't think it's going to take a lot for him to get there. That's just what I think. Yeah.
I like it. No, I like it. I mean, The only part of rushing yards with quarterbacks, and again, that it's actually one of my favorite props to bet generally, and I think
Yeah.
probably because of the Patrick Mahomes, I think it was the Super Bowl where I had under on his
Oh,
rushing yards, and he passed the rushing yard
yeah.
prop like right in the third quarter, and then he was taking the sacks, but he was trying to run it out, and he lost like 18 yards in the last 2 minutes and won it.
Exactly.
So I will go with that.
Exactly.
I do worry about the not for this one, but just generally the kneel downs right at like the end
Yeah.
of sort of right the game or the
Exactly.
half.
Like, yeah, we did one. We did I usually I'll almost always pick the over on quarterback rushing yards when I like it. But the kneel downs are the kiss of death. Like
Yeah.
you need them to go over by you want them to go over by 3, because then if they kneel down, you're going to lose a yard there. So like when we've bet Tom Brady's over, I think it was half a rushing yards when he like went off for that 11-yard run. So it was like the nicest moment ever, because I'm like, yes, he can't screw this up for me. He's made it. He got 10 yards, I think, is what he got that game. So,
Right.
but you do always, but I don't see the Bengals blowing out the Chargers. Like, I just don't see it. So I don't think that should be a worry here. But the Bengals, like I said, they're kind of on a roll, but I can't see this game being a blowout.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's obviously, I think it's still a 3-point spread at this point. So
Yeah.
obviously, odds makers expect it to be close. Yeah, I love it. My favorite rushing prop, by the way, in history was always Phillip Rivers under half a yard, because you're right. You had to have some crazy circumstances for he to actually like take off out of the pocket and everything like that.
Oh my
And then
gosh, yeah.
the best. It was like just a
That's so
guaranteed
funny.
winner.
Yeah.
So my first prop that I like,
Okay.
Kendall, and again, we talked about the fact that lines have moved. I
Yes.
looked at this line early on in the day. It was 64.5 receiving yards. I looked at it before we recorded, like a half hour before, it was 68.5 receiving yards. It is now 69.5 receiving yards. I'm still going to go over because I have it at the projection, as does our prop bet cheat sheet. It is Chris Godwin in his going over his receiving yards at -114. Now, it's actually -115. There are a lot of things that are negatives here, Kendall. I want to get them out of the way, because it's not like going crazy with this. He has not topped this number in 3 games, like his last 3 games. He hasn't topped it. It's a game the Bucs are favored by 11, so you figure maybe they don't need to throw all the time. And he's faced the Falcons before, and he came in at 62 yards. So there's a lot, and Atlanta doesn't give up a ton of big yardage games to receivers. Only one receiver all year has gone over 100 yards against them. But they do struggle to contain slot receivers. And obviously Godwin moves around, but he plays, primarily out of the slot. And he's going to avoid AJ Terrell. That's their one real cornerback here. So I think we're going to see a lot of Godwin in this game. I think they might look to back off Leonard Fournette a little bit after his big workload, against the Colts and everything like that. I have him projected for 81.3. Our prop bet cheat sheet has him projected for 81.3 as well. Wow, they've upped it as well. That's interesting. When I looked earlier, it was 79.6 at the prop bet cheat sheet. Now we're actually right there in line. So I do think that this is a game where it's going to be a Godwin game, man. So this is where I'm going over.
Here's the thing. I like it. And I think there's more positives to this one than negatives. Because like you said, like he's been rolling since AB suffered that ankle injury this season. He's averaging 6.6 catches and around 79 yards per game over the last 5 weeks. And he scored 3 touchdowns. And the reason I'm agreeing with you on this is because one of my other props was that he's going to score at any time during that game. So I am with you on that. I know. So we're just kind of in sync already for this first game. But I like it. Like I said, there's no reason to expect that Godwin's like production and consistent production like in this matchup to drop off against the Falcons. And I believe their pass defense ranks like 29th in DVOA. So I do agree with you there. It might be a number that we sweat out, though. I will say that. We might sweat that one just a little bit.
I liked it when it was 64.5 a lot more. But we're at the limit, PS, right?
Yes,
like if we're looking at it and it's like 71.5, I'm just like, I'm already pushing the limit, to be honest. And by the way, I will say this. I mean, when I do projections, because I do fantasy work as well. So I do projections for every player.
Absolutely.
There are edges everywhere that you see where my projections will differ from a line by 10, receiving yards in particular. But like, it's not just about the difference in the yards, right? It's about a whole bunch of different factors. So some people, I know I get this a lot to be like, why does 2 yards make such a difference to you? Because the edge is significant, even at those little bits right there. how, confident you feel that a player is going to go over. But it does sound like we're both at least on the same page that Godwin is going to have a game here. So was one of your 5 Godwin actually scoring a touchdown?
Yes, it was. It
Amazing.
was. Because like I said, toxic trait. I was just going to get my toxic traits out of the way, which is a quarterback rushing prop, and it is an anytime touchdown scorer. And I live for them. I don't know why, but I just love them. But I did have them for kind of like the reasons that we said before. And it may it may not seem like it, but Godwin, like his production is well, and it's confusing because the Falcons have like elected to play Grant like a safety at cornerback. So I think that's a matchup. Like we have at PFF, we have this wide receiver cornerback matchup chart, and that is just a mismatch in and of itself because Grant's allowing 86% of his targets to be completed. And then between like what we talked about, when Godwin plays the Falcons, he does really well. It's just like one of those teams that I think he just circles it on his schedule and he just says, you know what, I'm going to do really well because I have this written down. In the 6 games he's played against Atlanta since his second year in the league, he has caught 32 passes, 585 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He hasn't not scored. He's scored in every single meeting since 2018. So I don't see that trend not continuing. I just don't. And that's just a feeling, and that's just toxicity.
I mean, I love it. No, and in fact, I'm going to add on to my bet, which I already had it at 64.5. I'm going to add on the anytime. Do you know what the odds are on it, by the way?
I think I saw it at -110.
Okay, yeah. So this is not
nothing great. It's nothing great, but like when you parlay it in with some, like maybe with yours and his receiving yards or something like that, it makes it a little bit more valuable for sure.
I think that's what we're going to be doing right here. Absolutely. I'm going to be parlaying it. Of course, we're all in on the Chris Godwin train. So if he fails, we're never doing this again. It is on us, actually.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm going to go. I don't always go overs. Everybody relax. I go up mostly unders actually when I do props, but people hate. I mean, because unders. Look, who said it? I mean, he's Chris Raybon actually from the Action Network. He said it in terms of betting unders overall. It's not fun to root like against things, right? You want to root for things. But unders, like you're winning the second the game starts, right? Like you're already winning. You're already ahead. It's a little harder. So. And I do think that the markets generally prop things up because they know people want to bet overs rather than unders. But I'm going over anyway, Kendall, on this one.
Okay.
This one is Justin Jefferson. It's a big number. Ooh. It's a big number. It's 85.5 receiving yards. It's at -115. It hasn't moved, thankfully, from when I started it. Goodness gracious.
Kendall,
I have it at 95.2. Our BettingPros projections have it at 98.05. So this is something where we see an edge. Look, he had the squeaky wheel game, right? He had the I need the ball more game. This is a real thing, okay? You look at it when people, especially talented elite players, call for the ball more and coaches decide to do it. That is sort of very sticky. Before those, okay, before he called for it, in the 2 games prior, he had 9 targets, 5 catches, and 90 yards combined. And it wasn't like the worst matchup, so he just wasn't getting the ball. Since the squeaky wheel game, okay, since he called that I need the ball, he is averaging in those 3 games 10 targets, 7 catches, and 131 receiving yards. I mentioned this on our earlier podcast this week, but I think the lack of Dalvin Cook is really as good as Alexander Madison. It's going to funnel them into sort of a passing work here. And I think Kirk Cousins is going to be throwing the ball a ton in a game they obviously have to win. And even though they're favored, I think they're going to keep their foot on the gas here. That should mean a lot of Jefferson, a lot of Kirk Cousins, a lot of Adam Thielen. So it's a big number, Kendall, but I really just think that at this point, given that he's basically been like, get me the ball, and they have been, I think it's going to continue here. I'm going over 85.5.
I like 85.5. I think, like you said, that's our limit. Like that is the max. If you go over it, just you're crazy. But I do like it. Like I am an Adam Thielen manager in fantasy, and it's been tough, but it's been fun for me because like backstory, I do like we talked about, I do social media for PFF. It has been so fun to post. Like Justin Jefferson is a guy for us that when we are posting his stats and numbers, it takes off like a rocket because people are backing him. They're cheering for him. Like between him and Jamar Chase, like those 2 guys, I mean, we could just post all of them like for one day and it would still get a crazy amount of numbers. And we like Kirk Cousins here at PFF too. I think he's the 4th highest rated quarterback for us throughout the whole season. So he hasn't been doing poorly. And I think, like you said before, it's kind of not maybe a get right game, but it's a game where they can like blow it out, right? Because who are they playing? The Lions?
The Lions, yeah.
Like, what are we talking about there? So I think
we had this the first game, though. This is my only worry with it, and I don't want to make a point against myself. And I took the Vikings, by the way. One of my favorite bets was the Vikings laying a touchdown, but they don't blow anybody out, right?
No,
they play the one-score games. And earlier this year with Detroit as well, they won on that last-second field goal. That's my only worry. Like, keep your foot on the gas for once in your life,
I like that. And I think the Lions, there's something with the Lions, against the spread. I think the Lions, play hard.
They play hard.
They play hard, and they don't they don't play down to who people think their team is. But I just can't see them getting their first win against the Vikings. But it is a big number to go against. I think they have to get in that rhythm early, though. I think that's the key here, because I feel like with Kirk, if he doesn't find that connection early, then he moves on to Adam Thielen, or he spreads the ball around a little bit more so that they can try and lay it on as much as they can. So I think that early connection for this prop is going to be the biggest thing we have to watch for, because once it hits halftime and they're not where they're at, or the Lions are playing, Lions are not a dirty team to play, but they're scrappy. They they're going to contend. So if you don't hit it early, he's going to look to spread the level a little bit more than he usually does with Jefferson. So I think that's the only thing that's a little bit scary, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's not something, 85.5, doesn't matter who it is. You can't feel great about it, right? You can't be like, this is in the bag, because you're right. If you're quiet early on and they take a lead, Madison may break one for 80 yards early on and they may never look back. They may not have to push it. But I do think this is one, given the fact that they lead by a touchdown every single game and they just can't put it away. They're going to keep their foot on the gas here with Jefferson. Keep it going. All right, let's go. You got, are these dirty with the anytime touchdowns right now, or are we going more conventional right now?
No, that was my only anytime for today. Okay. I did, I will say that you can trust me a little bit on those, because those are my bread and butter. Those are something I love and I look through a lot. I had little Jordan Humphrey yesterday as an anytime touchdown scorer.
Did you?
For plus 850. So I put a lot of pride into them, because Ben, the guy who I do my prop streams with, he's a data scientist. So data scientist, holy crap, he's using all the numbers. I'm going to give you anytime touchdown scores to even the playing field. So my next one is interesting. It's Tevin Coleman over. When I saw it, I'm sure it's gone up but 47.5 rushing yards. And that's the Eagles and Jets. And I like this one because I think it's priced. I think it's low for Tevin Coleman. He has the majority share of offensive utilizations in the Jets, without Michael Carter. And he played 45% of those offensive snaps, 47% of total team rush attempts. I don't expect, because of the Eagles and they're 6.5 point dogs right at home. So
the Jets are dogs.
Jets. Yeah, the Jets are dogs. So the Jets may not hit 34-ish rush attempts like they did against Houston last week, but I do think his opportunities are still going to be there, and the lack of rush attempts is they should directly impact Austin Walter and Johnson. And so I kind of like this number here. I think he can eclipse it. We're going to sweat it out for sure. I think it's going to be one that you sweat out, but I think he can just itch over that line.
So what was the number that you had it at?
This was early. I think I had it at 47.5.
Dude, it's gone way down since then. So you're in even better shape than you have. Wow. It's down to 39.5.
Well, then, damn, what am I missing then?
I don't know. Pound it over that.
I didn't see any news.
No, there's nothing.
I didn't see any news. So I still like Coleman. And PFS, our fantasy projections, like you guys do, we're expecting 57.9 rushing yards for Coleman on about 13.5 attempts. So wow. I don't know what I'm missing here. I saw this number and I talked with Ben and I said, what's going on here? And so if there's information that I do not know, then I'll take it back. But I still really like him hitting this over.
It's obviously better for you at this point. There is no look. And I mean, there's nothing specific. And as much as I monitor it from a fantasy standpoint, I am a Jets fan, as most of our listeners know, unfortunately. We have, thank you for that. It's been a very difficult road, but I am surviving. So there's nothing. No. And again, they largely split snaps, but Coleman sort of dominated for the the touches, in that game. And so I do think it's there. And look, people are we've got, people in the live stream who are basically saying they see it at Prize Picks at 37.5. So we were way over it. Look, I'm looking at my projections right now. I am with you right now. I have him for 13.3, carries and everything like that. And 46.5 rushing yards. So if it was 47, like maybe I'd be like right around there. But at 39, yeah, I'll go. I mean, he's going to get the bulk of the, maybe he'll cede the touchdowns again to Austin Walter for all we know.
Exactly.
But I will say the rushing yards and the bulk of the carries, like he will get that in a game where, again, like they'll play from behind, but Jalen Hurts is banged up in this game.
Exactly.
And this will actually go into my prop. I don't like the Jets. They can't pass all over the place. Like that's not what they can do.
No.
Which, P.S. spoiler alert, will be one of my props in a second. So I think they will try to establish the ground game as they look to keep this close. So I don't mind at all. But that does lead me then into another prop that I'm going with for the Jets, which is Zach Wilson under 234.5 passing yards. Our prop bet cheat sheet has him at 223. I've got him at 214. His last 3 games, 192. Then he had 51 where he got injured, but that was against the Patriots. He wasn't going over that. And then 145 against Houston. He doesn't look 100%. Like you saw him kind of limp a little bit with their Philly, again, is going to run the ball a ton. So, like the clock is just going to continue to bleed. That's going to shorten drives. I agree with you that I expect, Tevin Coleman to lead the way on the ground, at least have 13, 14 carries, have Ty Johnson and have Austin Walter chip in with another 5 to 6 or something like that. That's going to be a lot of rushing attempts as they try to sort of cover up for the fact that their defense is awful. And if you look at the Eagles against the pass, they're not that great necessarily against the pass, but they don't allow a ton of passing yards. I mean, you look at their last several games, and again, this is 2 mediocre quarterbacks, which I think we could probably at this point in his career generously call Zach Wilson, like hasn't sort of. Thank you. Generous. I'm holding out hope for the future. Daniel Jones last week, 202. Teddy Bridgewater, Trevor Siemian before that, 214. Teddy Bridgewater before that, 226. Justin Herbert torched them, but then Jared Goff, 222. Like you got to earn the passing yards against them. And 243 was a high line for me. Corey Davis is doubtful in this game as well. So that's going to take away for him. So I feel like I like it. By the way, people are loving the Tevin Coleman prop in the chats now. By the way, they're like, why am I not smashing it over? You're right.
Exactly. And that I feel like that correlates with yours though.
Exactly.
I mean, it's, what we're just working together here. We didn't even talk about these props before, and now we have 2 of 3 that we're just like on the same page about.
I mean, I really do see this as coming as from the Jets. Like they do not obviously ever want to get into a shootout with any team, of course. And I don't think they need to in this one with a team that's going to run the ball a lot. And the Eagles, obviously, we saw them last week against the Giants. They are not an offensive juggernaut as much as they put up points randomly against teams. Like I think this game probably stays within relatively the touchdown that it is projected to stay to. And that lends itself to running, not taking chances on the passing game. So I think we're seeing this differently. We just attacked it from different angles.
Yeah, so. No, I think we're on the same page for sure. I mean, I'm so sorry you're a Jets fan. I'm so sorry about Zach Wilson. I feel bad a little bit. Did it hurt you? Did it hurt you last week when I remember we posted the video of him trying to shovel that pass and then it got intercepted because he hit it off the back of whoever.
The best part is that once you have endured the butt fumble, all other quarterback mishaps are basically written off entirely for this. So I'm immune to any failings of any of my sports teams, but that is what you get when you grow up in Queens. I like to say it builds character. My wife would say it makes me kind of just a sad human. So either way, I can deal with it. All right, what's your next prop, Kendall? What do you got?
So my next one, and this is what I want to ask you. I don't have my phone out or anything, but I want to see the line on Jamar Chase and his receiving yards. Because when I looked before, it was absolutely mispriced, and I'm sure there's been a slight correction. Because when I saw it, it was 54.5.
64.5 now is what I have.
64.5. Okay, so this is one that I'm monitoring, and I know I'm going back to the Bengals, and it's just because we're around them, we're in Cincinnati, and I really do like Jamar Chase. So his receiving yardage numbers. When I saw it originally, 54.5, I still kind of like 64.5 receiving yards. But 54.5, it wasn't 54.5. It wasn't priced that low since week 1. 64.5 is a different story, but I like where it's at. I know the receiving core is like back to full strength, but I think this number is still at 64.5. I think it still has value. We see like our PFF fantasy projection sees Chase hitting 86.6 receiving yards on 9 total targets. So I think he still sits above like the whole team target share at 21% over the 4-game stretch, and that's like 35% of the team's total air yards. That connection with him and Burrow is just like unmatched. And I know we've talked about that game a little bit earlier, but I just think it's going to be a really good matchup. And I hope that both these quarterbacks go into this game and they're just like unhinged, like they're unlocked. Like, hey, go duel it out. I hope it's going to be a bit of a higher scoring game. But I do like Jamar Chase. I think his connection with Burrow has been there all season, and I do think that this over has some value to look into.
Yeah, I do like it. Hold on. I told you. Kept bringing it in. There it is. Can you say hi to Kendall?
Hello.
That's my son, Will. He probably can't hear you because I've got the
dang.
headphones on. Hi, do you need
Perfect.
something, or were you just coming in to say hi?
I was coming to look for
Go ahead and take a look for your Harry Potter wand. No problem. Kendall, you should know that my office doubles used to be their playroom. So I warned you about this. So please don't storm off. It's perfect.
No, I'm here.
Good. Very
That's
good.
Awesome.
So I will say that again, our prop bet cheat sheet, what it does is it ranks props based on the consensus projections. It likes this one as well. It's their third, one of their favorites, actually. So they have Chase projected at 72.2. So they definitely have the edge. I have it as a bigger edge than that. And I think it's partly because of the way I do projections. It does take into account the ability for explosive plays, which is what Chase has. He's been quiet, right? This is a part of the problem. Like, he hasn't gone crazy with the yardage of late, but I do have this at 78.2 yards. So I'm with you. I like it at 64.5. Like, if it was at 54.5 early in the week, I would have hit that all day long. Is that it? That's all you need? All right.
Like,
see you later,
I'm
sir.
Good to go.
He's like, I'm good. I ruined your podcast, your live stream, everything. I'm good. Bye, buddy. You did a great job. You didn't ruin it. I'm just kidding. Sorry. Yeah. So if it was, it's fine. It's at 54, father of the year at 54.5. I would have loved it, but I like it at 64.5 for sure. And I think you're getting the benefit, Kendall, of the fact that he's been relatively kind of quiet in the yardage area and everything like that. And I think that just naturally with the public, especially, but even with the books, who I don't know if they always price player props consistently enough, that I think that you're getting a good number here. So I like it at 64.5 for sure.
Perfect.
Even
Perfect. See, people are going to think that we met beforehand and just went through all this. Like, I'm telling you guys, we did not. We're just on the same page here.
This is actually the first time that we've ever talked in person other than on like messaging. So congratulations. We're doing great.
Perfect.
I hope anyway, unless all these lose, in which case everybody's going to be like, get out.
I'm turning Twitter off then for sure.
It's fine. Okay. We can also blame it on my son. We could say that when he came in, totally screwed up our mode.
Exactly.
All right. I'm going to another quarterback, but I am going over with this one. It's Derek Carr. It is 268.5. Our BettingPros consensus projections has him at 286.9. I have him at 291.2. And I think that this is a little bit deflated. And I think if anything, it's going to go down a little bit here because of no Darren Waller. And you think of how big of a factor Darren Waller is to that passing game. I completely get that, but I really don't think it's going to affect Carr's numbers. And we saw that last week against the Cowboys where Waller missed most of that game and he was still throwing it. To me, this boils down to a couple of things. Number one, I've said it multiple times. I think the loss of Henry Ruggs had really affected the offense. You saw them not put up points for a while because they didn't have that deep threat that was going over the top and taking some of the defense's attention to allow Renfro and to allow Darren Waller underneath to get in there. Now they are using Desean Jackson, who again, I talked about this earlier on our fantasy podcast. He was questionable, but he's good to go now with his calf injury. I think that's going to help them open it up for sure. I also think that this is against Washington, which is just maybe the most pass funnel defense that you can have at this point. They're third to last in defensive DVOA against the pass. I really just think that this is a game where the Raiders now, who, kind of saved their season a little bit with that win on Thanksgiving and got themselves sort of back into it, now have a chance to pass all over Washington, which every quarterback other than maybe Russell Wilson can do at this point. And I think he's going to put up a large yardage total here, even involving Jacobs, who's been getting more involved in the passing game as well. So I expect him to threaten 300 yards, which he has hit at, in 4 of his last 6 games. So this is a prop where I like Derek Carr a lot this weekend.
I like Derek Carr. I like that matchup. I'm a Seahawks fan, so it's been.
You are?
I am. I'm from Seattle, so it's been a little rough the last year, this year especially. So watching them against Washington was just absolutely painful. But I like Carr has been interesting, right? Because he, at least for us, and you guys can make fun of it later, but for us, he was in serious MVP conversation at the beginning of the year. And we were very serious about that just because of his overall numbers, his overall production. And then, there's just all the things outside of the organization kind of lost control a little bit. Losing your head coach doesn't help. The Ruggs situation doesn't help either. But I do like this prop especially against Washington, because the team, like Washington, is now forced to blitz more without Chase Young's presence. And I think in this matchup, it should remain tight and maybe higher scoring. I think I'm reading that right. So I think Derek Carr, I think they're on an upward, their trajectory is going upwards. And I do think that he can hit this number. It is one, though, that I think we'll sweat out a lot, because Washington, saying Taylor Heineke's name is so weird to me, but that team is almost, it's like an annoying, fly. They're always around. They're somehow making these weird plays. They're somehow staying competitive. And I just don't think they should be, but it's another weird game where you go in there and you think, okay, the Raiders should win this game, but are they going to? I don't know. Is it going to be a weird trap game? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the Raiders have I don't know. They have the frequent ability to make you be like, oh man, this team looks good right now, right? This team looks good. And then to lay a complete stinker. That is not beyond the realm of possibilities.
I know.
I would say that here, at home, the total is 49.5. So there should be some points scored in this one. And the Raiders defense is nothing to write home about either right now. So I do think that Washington, with Taylor Heineke, with Gibson, who's looked great of late. They're going to be without J.D. McKissick in this game. He's already been rolled out. But I do think that there will be points in this game, and it will require Derek Carr to throw. So I feel okay with it. I will say somebody in the chat right now is saying that he was able to parlay both Tevin Coleman over 37.5 with Jamar Chase, which he got it at 59.5. So he is very excited by that.
Wait, I'm so excited. I almost want to when we get out of here, I'm going to do the same exact thing and then just go on my phone, call the bookie and be like, hey, we got to do this.
It's going to be like a 14-leg parlay with all the props. I love it. We're going to just be like nonstop. I love it. All right, whatever. We're going to be great. It's going to be fantastic.
No,
all of these are going to hit.
I will say Las Vegas, my favorite person that we've covered so far this season is Max Crosby. I absolutely huge Max Crosby fan, just in his life in general. And if you don't know his story, you should really go. It's incredible what he's been able to do and the turnaround that he's had just in a year. I think he's a year sober from drinking, and he's just been totally amazing. He's only 25. We ran a graphic the other day, and I actually had to message one of my team members, Zach, and I had to be, is Max Crosby 25? He's like, yes. He's one of our highest graded just defenders this season. So it's fun to watch him. The Vegas team is fun to watch, although sometimes cringy. They are fun to watch for sure.
Oh yeah. Crosby's had an incredible season, single-handedly sort of, putting pressure. So this is a game actually I'm interested to watch because Washington's getting a little frisky right now, winners of 3 in a row. And I'm sorry that you were Seattle. I will say that as much as I love Russ, I love it because of the Jamal Adams trade and because we do have your draft pick. I do need to root for you to lose a little bit. It's nothing personal. But
it's understandable.
I have to do it. All right, I'll take it. I felt like if I didn't confess that right off the bat, then you and I may never agree on a prop again.
It's okay.
All right. Last one, right? Number 5. What do you got?
Last one is probably the one that I'm kind of I don't know. It's kind of iffy. It's kind of a longer, only because of his pass play and what we've seen. But it is Tom Brady. I'm going to go with a quarterback as well. I always like to sprinkle a quarterback in there. Over 2.5 passing touchdowns. Okay. So this is it's interesting, right? Because he's been on a little bit of a lull in the last few weeks. He hasn't hit this number, I believe, in four weeks, maybe even 5 weeks. So he hasn't hit that over in a while. But Brady had 5 touchdowns the last time these two teams met in week 2. And so I think that, and he only threw for 276 yards. But I think maybe this is a game that he says, okay, like we need to get back. They're out of form a little bit right now, right? Like, why is Leonard Fournette scoring 4 touchdowns and like killing my dreams of like getting anytime touchdown scores? I don't know. But that's what I'm kind of trying to correlate the Chris Godwin anytime with Tom Brady. I think that this is a very doable team to do this against. Like we talked about AJ Terrell. But I just think that maybe this is a team when they play the Falcons, they play well. And so I'm just kind of looking back historically at what he does against them. And that's kind of where I'm rolling with this one. And I think the price is right too. From when I saw it before. So I like him going over 2.5. I usually don't do quarterback passing touchdowns because, again, I get my heart broken all the time.
Right.
But this is one, if you're trying to risk a little bit more, I think this is a bet from all the ones that I've given that's kind of more risky. And it's kind of one, again, I say it a lot, but you're going to sweat out a little bit just because we don't know what kind of Tom Brady we're going to get. Like, yes, he's played very well, but you have games like last week where it's like, okay, Leonard Fournette, 4 touchdowns. It's like you don't really know what the production is going to look like game to game anymore. And while he's doing really well, and so is that team, you might want to hold your breath a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so here's how I with passing touchdowns. Here's what I'll say. I don't ever, when I run my projections, just the way basically my model works, like I can't ever project somebody for like 3 touchdowns. Like I just can't. But here's what I will say is that of every quarterback, and I've projected every quarterback so far, Tom Brady has the highest number of passing touchdowns, which is 2.4. So if there is somebody who is going to do it, it's certainly him. The thing is, like you said, it's a little bit fluky, right? Because last week he could have very easily had like 4 passing touchdowns, right? If things just broke a little differently. So with the passing touchdowns, I always get a little bit worried about it for sure. But I like it. I like getting spicy with it. And if there is somebody who would go 2.5, because 2.5 is the line, obviously, it would be Brady, because I do have him projected for the most number of passing touchdowns of anybody. Again, there are a few in like the 2.2s or the 2.1s, but at 2.4, he's the big one. So
perfect. There we go.
You said one that you didn't love that much. I will say one that I don't love that much, but I'm still going with it. Again, we're a little limited, Kendall. Like we can be honest. Like it's Friday. Not every game has a prop and everything like that. So we'll see. But it is TJ Hogginson. It is over 45.5 receiving yards at -115. I will say that there are bad things about this one as well, which is he's obviously had some weird games in that 2 of the last 3 games, he's barely been targeted. Even on Thanksgiving, he had the touchdown, but still just 3 catches, 35 yards. And then he was entirely shut out against Pittsburgh, just not even involved. But other than that, he's been pretty reliable at beating this number. Now, the Vikings give up no production right now to tight ends, right? That's the big deal, including Hockenson early in the year. So this is not a defense that you attack with a tight end. But they're also allowing 269 passing yards per game. And I think without DeAndre Swift in this game, that's a big factor here for me. Jamal Williams is a fine pass catcher, but I don't think he's going to factor into the passing game as much. Although Swift hadn't been that much since Dan Campbell took over, play calling duties. But either way, it's just a game where they don't, have the wide receivers. I mean, Josh Reynolds, Amon-Ra St. Brown, like Hockenson has to be more of the receiver than just sort of the tight end. I think this is sort of when you get back, he had that stretch early in the season where he was like 8, 9, 10, 11 targets per game. And I think they're going to have to do this in a game, Kendall, that we talked about. I expect Minnesota to put up points here. And that's why I expect Jefferson. I think they're going to put their foot on the gas and keep going. So I think there's going to be a lot of passing from Jared Goff, a lot of targets for Hockenson. And I think those targets are going to be enough to get him over the 45.5 number here, even though, again, Minnesota has been this season very good against tight ends.
Yeah. 45.5 is such a dirty number because I can easily see it going over. And then I know I'm going to message you if it goes under and say, well, what the hell? Like I could have seen that too. Cause it's it's right in the middle though, like you said, of his production. It's like, okay, but we've talked about that. The Lions are dirty. They're dirty. They're scrappy. They're going to stay in these games, and how they do that. Like you said, maybe DeAndre Swift hasn't been as much of that movie star that we expected with this team that's looking for their first win. It's like soul crushing, but I like this. I like 45.5. The thing is, like, I can see it happening. Like I can see him going over more than I can see him going under. And his production, like his receiving trends haven't been bad, right? 534 receiving yards, like 48. So he's averaging 48.5 a game.
Correct.
So I think when you're talking about the Vikings, and we talked about it too, the Vikings play a little fluky sometimes. They allow those big plays to happen, and they allow teams to kind of stay in it. Although we love Kirk Cousins, so I could see Hogginson taking this over. I think again, it's the thing that the Lions, they're gonna have to play like they've been playing before, right? They're gonna have to stick into these games, or else they might go a different direction than the tight end, because like you said, the Vikings do really well at that kind of coverage. So I like it, but they're gonna have to stay in that game for it to happen.
Yeah. So what I like about this realistically is the fact that like when you take a Justin Jefferson type of thing, you're looking at something where you have to sort of he's got to earn that, right? Like this is not going to happen on a fluke play for the most part, right? It's going to be all over the place. When you're looking at Hockenson at 45.5, that could be one blown coverage and you sort of get there, right? 2 catches, something you can get there. So I think that's also why I like Chase as well, because I think Chase's number is so realistic that, you get enough targets, you can just get there without going over like 10, 11 yards a catch. You can just get there pretty easily. So I think that's why, Kendall, this was it. This was our first ever props live stream podcast. That's it. You blew through it. I know we saw a lot of things similarly. I hope that's good for our listeners. If not, my son Will is to blame, as we said.
Exactly. We'll find out. Do not add us on Twitter on Sunday if these all go wrong. We know. Don't worry. But I have a good feeling about these. These were all good ones that when we started talking about them, I'm like, okay, none of these are unrealistic. But then we say that every time.
Yeah, of course. They're all in play, as we joke about.
Exactly.
Right. All right. So Kendall, just remind everybody where they can check out, your work, find you on Twitter, all the good stuff.
Yeah, so my personal Twitter, K Valenzuela 17. That is where you can find me, and then just all of the work at PFF. And my email is in my bio. If you have suggestions, anything like that, we always love to take it. But I help run the main. So when you're seeing the main Instagram, and I help with Twitter as well. That is all us. But thank you so much for asking me to come on here. It's exciting. I think we did well.
Yeah, I hope so. Anyway, you do great work with props. I've been checking out sort of your prop work, which is great. And PFF is obviously fantastic. I use it for a ton of data and all of that. So I hope everybody make sure they, subscribe to PFF as well and checks out your work. In the meantime, I hope everybody has a great weekend. I'll talk to you again on Sunday morning on our live stream here at our YouTube channel. So I'll see you then.